He tends to kind of favour those he's listened to, nearer in time.
Yes.
And so having had that, before that call with Putin, the talk was all about whether or not the Americans would give Tomahawk long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine. And after that call with Putin, it turned into a question of how much land Ukraine should be forced to give up.
And here with me on Pinar and Friends, Matt Torbett, the former Labour advisor, and Joe Tanner, the political strategist. And we have now been joined from stateside George Grylls, the Times Washington correspondent. Hello to you, George.
Good afternoon.
George, good to have you here. There's a lot. We've got too many things I'd like to chat to you about to get in the time we've got left on the programme. I'm just going to pile in with the question of Ukraine. I mean, President Trump addressed the issue of Ukraine and hopes of peace there when he met earlier on with the Australian leader Anthony Albanese. Let's have a listen to this.
I've settled 8 wars in 8 months. Not bad. I have one more to go. It's Russia-Ukraine, and I think we'll get there, but it's turned out to be nasty because you have 2 leaders that truly hate each other. They hate each other beyond all else, and it makes it actually a little bit difficult.
A little bit difficult, understatement of not just this year, but I don't know how long. Now, the president was also asked by a reporter if he still thought Ukraine could win back the land taken by Russia, as he said last month.
Well, they could. They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. War is a very strange thing.
War is a very strange thing. Anything can happen. I mean, George, how's that going down with you and where you are? I mean, in particular, look at the background to this. We had, a short while ago, President Trump sounding as if he was finally losing patience with Vladimir Putin, getting tough with Putin. The idea was that he might actually supply Ukraine with those powerful Tomahawk cruise missiles. Then a phone call with Putin later and a meeting with Ukraine's leader Vladimir Zelensky very quickly after that. And the Tomahawks are no longer on offer to Ukraine, and it looks as if he's now parroting lines that you could hear any given day from Vladimir Putin. What on earth are we to make of this?
I think it's another deft act of diplomacy from Vladimir Putin. Knowing that Zelensky was going to have his 3rd meeting with Trump in the White House this year, he got in ahead of him, and the Kremlin instigated the call with Trump, and he managed to get him for 2.5 hours. Now, anyone who's been in the room with Trump for 2.5 hours knows that at the end of it, he quite often comes out repeating what you've said for a while after. He tends to kind of favour those he's listened to, nearer in time.
Yes.
And so having had that, before that call with Putin, the talk was all about whether or not the Americans would give Tomahawk long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine. And after that call with Putin, it turned into a question of how much land Ukraine should be forced to give up.
Yeah, I mean, George, you can argue that is about Vladimir Putin's diplomatic skill, or you could say this is about Donald Trump, who's a bit like a cushion, just bears the impression of the last person who sat on him. And if that is the case, then what hope is there of getting a clear position out of the President of the United States on this issue?
I think if you're Ukrainian, if you take a longer view of it, you have to draw some positives from the fact that, for example, cast your mind back to February this year, there could have been a public meltdown very easily in the Oval Office. Actually, Trump was pretty polite about Zelensky in front of the cameras and praised his suit and all the rest of it. And the disagreements actually happened behind closed doors, so the Europeans can count that as a victory. After the February summit, the US withdrew weapons from Ukraine, and that was existential for the Ukrainians. That has not happened this time, and actually the Ukrainians dragged him back into a position where they said, let's freeze the conflict along the current front lines. That's where the ceasefire should be. So there are positives to draw from the Ukrainians, but certainly Trump appears to have lost patience again with Ukraine rather than with Russia, perhaps because he sees it as easier to kind of bully Ukraine into a settlement rather than bully Putin.
He does seem to be, he's wobbling about all over the place, depending on the last conversation, Joe.
Yeah, and it was interesting that George mentioned that point about the ending 8 wars in 8 months, and it sort of makes you wonder whether is it about him losing patience in the sense of the positions that both sides are taking, or is it just more that he wants to hurry up and solve the 9th one in the 9th month because it's gone on too long and he wants to kind of
nail it? Grown up, is it?
Well, but I don't think we expected anything different. I mean, that's the challenge, and so there is something really interesting about this dynamic where it does feel, I think, you're absolutely right. It does feel that the last person that sort of has a long and sort of impressionable conversation on Trump affects the way that he behaves. But I do think it's worrying where this is going, because it certainly did feel that we were going in the direction of a bit more support for Ukraine and where things were heading. But we also had this strange thing over the weekend about the tunnel, didn't we, between Russia and Alaska, and the talk of this tunnel that I think was several times longer than the Channel Tunnel, which would have been like one of the most ambitious projects. And Trump kind of just... It was interesting, the way his language around it was very much, well, I've only just heard about it. But, it's an interesting idea, kind of, was the vibe he was giving. Well, you wonder where that came up in the conversation between the two of these leaders, whether that came up as part of the, is Trump getting dangled a carrot by Putin somewhere? Who knows?
Well, he does this, though. It frustrates me that he always seems to act as a sort of observer, forgetting that he's actually president. He goes, oh, this is happening. I had no idea. And I used to think it with Israel-Palestine. I thought if there's one person that could pick up the phone and remind Netanyahu that actually he needs America, it's Donald Trump. And instead he'd go, yeah, it's really bad, isn't it? And I don't know if he's a bit bored. He solved 8 wars, so he's now starting one with Venezuela. I suppose if he can stop a war he started, does that count as 10 after Russia, Ukraine or whatever else? Like, utterly ridiculous. George, are you aware from any murmurs both in America and over here whether there will be another concerted effort of EU leaders to go over after any potential summit to try and focus Donald Trump's mind once more on actually maybe we need to support Ukraine and don't just let Putin buy a bit more time as he appeared to do in Alaska?
Well, they're going to struggle to pin him down in the next few days because he's actually going off to Asia at the end of this week, and he's got his summit with Xi Jinping. So it's he's focusing on that hemisphere, as it were. But then at some point he's got to crowbar in his meeting with Putin in Budapest. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if I was a European diplomat, I'd try to kind of add on a leg in Paris or Berlin or London or somewhere to that European visit, as a way of kind of trying to keep Trump on the straight and narrow. That's what I would probably be trying to do.
Yeah.
And I believe he's got competition, actually, to try and get in with him, because he's also, I believe, floated the idea that he might go and meet your man in North Korea as well, just to sort of see if we can maybe normalise things there. Yeah. I think even that's a stretch for him to be fitting in Xi, Putin and Kim Jong-un. It's almost like the world's worst dinner party, actually, isn't it? I wouldn't fancy having them round for tea, would you?
Let no one get a word in edgeways. But does George raise an interesting point though about the fact that this Far Eastern trip's going on, and is this part of a game in advance of that? Because if he was going to the Far East and having a conversation in China where he'd taken a very strong line against Putin, would that have been a difficult backdrop?
It's true.
So is this actually... I always want to believe there's a double bluff with Trump. I don't know why. I just want to believe there's some good there and that there is a double bluff coming and he's playing some weird game. I mean, I'm sure he's not that good, but I just would like to believe there's a bigger play here that he's actually up to. But your point about the world leaders, George, I mean, surely they all would have badgered him when they were all in the Middle East anyway. Because and it's interesting that he's changed his position so quickly, because surely that would have been on the minds of everybody when they all gathered.
Waiting for 6 hours for and twiddling their thumbs in the same.
I was about to say, I don't think they had the time really to do it, because they were all kept waiting in Sharm el Sheikh while he was kind of in the Knesset, receiving all the accolades. So by the time he got there, it was a kind of in and out job.
And it didn't look like Keir Starmer sort of got blanked, didn't he? So it didn't look like he had much of a chance to speak. I suppose.
I've got to say, I do struggle with the idea of Donald Trump who moves in mysterious ways, rather like the good Lord. I do kind of struggle with that. I'm not
sure it's quite that level, but I just want to hope that there's something else in this. I just want to hope there's something else going on.
He did make comments though. He got asked, do you think Putin is playing you? And he says, I've been played by some of the best of them, but I always come out on top. So I don't know, is he aware he's being played? But he has got some up his sleeve.
He knows it. He's enough people telling him it's a risk.
I think we've got to hope so anyway. We've got to hope so.
Deep sigh.
We're trying to cheer everybody up.